I get this right. Good evening, everybody. There's nobody there yet. Hopefully, we'll get a few. I know it's a bank holiday in Ireland and around. Excuse me for a moment till I get comfortable. So we'll give this a moment or two just to get some people on. There's one. Give us a thumbs up there if you can hear me and make sure everything is all right. So yeah, I'll just give it a moment before I get going. Sorry. So good evening to anyone who may be watching, and Happy New Year to you all. Hope you've had a good one. Hope this year is the best year you've ever had. And yeah, just to say to you, anybody that's been looking for me over the last month or so, I haven't been back in Ireland because I'll explain as we go through this evening why the reasons why. But yeah, I'll be back in the middle of next week for a week and a half. So if anybody needs me at the clinic, give us a shout and we'll get you booked in while I'm there. Okay. So this is the first I ran a few of these coming towards the end of last year, and they got popular, thank God. And I'm going to start them again and let's see where they go. I'd love you to send me questions during the week to drive these conversations, because I'll probably run out very quick if I'm just making it up myself as regards answering questions. If I'm putting the questions up, I'm doing this so you guys can ask questions that you don't get answers to out there from the medical profession, let's say, or whatever, things you might be struggling with. So, and if I can help, well then great. So don't be afraid to throw questions at me during the week. Just send them through Facebook, private message, or Instagram. Everything's under my name, Mark Cleary, or email mark@markcleary.net if you want to go into more detail. And hopefully I'll be able to help you with some good answers to your health issues. So tonight, this I know is a very sensitive subject because I think it's probably touched most of us at some point in our lives. But tonight I'm going to speak about cancer and some natural protocols that you can use as a cancer support with treatment you may be having. And we'll just talk in general about cancer and, just put some information out there and see what you think of it. So, first of all, what I'd like to say, because this is such a sensitive subject, and the reason it's sensitive, I think we all know, is because it terrifies so many people. It terrifies us all, I suppose. It's the last thing you ever want to hear, that you have cancer. And in that sense, I'm sure most of you guys out there have lost close people in your lives to cancer. So that's what can make it so sensitive. And it's also a subject that, being someone who runs a natural health clinic, I meet so many people still today who are terrified of even saying the word. So what I'd like to say first and foremost is, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical person. So this is just the information I've gathered over the years as a natural health therapist, and through experience that I've had with cancer, not me personally, but people close to me, in helping them to try and get through it. And I've built a lot of information over the years, and in recent years I've had some great success stories helping people with quite serious cancers. So I've been given the opportunity now going into this year to go public about a program that I have available to people, and this is what I'd like to share with you tonight, the information about that. But let's go back and let's take a few steps back before I get into that information, because I think it's important we have conversations about this. It's funny, just as I was setting this up, an old pal of mine, I've just received a call from a family member of an old pal of mine, and what was the question? About cancer. It's everywhere. When I started out 30 years ago as a therapist, I remember figures being said to us that cancer was around 1 in 20, I think, at the time. Now we're being told we're not far off 1 in 2. And you hear people saying, well, that's because there's more people on the planet. But the reality of that is it is out there a lot more than it ever was. And the questions have to be why or what's causing it. And I don't think anybody truly knows the answer as to what's causing it, because I think you have a lot of experts in fields, and cancer can baffle them because they might be able to help one, but they can't help the next one, and so on and so on. And my own personal theory on it, having been around it for a long time now, is that the medical profession just aren't looking deep enough. They go with the science, which is fantastic, and they've had great success stories with it, but there's also big failures in the world of cancer. And that's why it terrifies us still today so much. If there was great success in the medical world with cancer, we wouldn't all be so scared of it today. And that's just a truth, because the reality is there's treatment programs. They usually involve chemotherapy and radiation, and that's it. There's no other help or advice from hospitals. Um, there's great doctors and oncologists doing great work out there, but they just run treatment programs. They diagnose and they treat, and they send the person home on their own, sitting at home with like a 5-year wait to see have they been given the all clear. You'll have your yearly checkup and you'll get great, at the end of your year, you're told the cancer hasn't come back. That's brilliant. And you build on that the following year and the following year. But that's a long time, 5 years, to be waiting to get the all clear. And I suppose myself and many like me, there's thousands and thousands of practitioners out there in the natural health world who have been kind of forced to look at this situation. And there's some great people out there doing great work around cancer, working naturally with it. And yeah, that's what I want to speak about tonight. So let me see let me first and foremost, because it's taken me a long time to speak about this. And the reason for it is I don't want to be upsetting anyone, because again, I know how sensitive a subject it is. So my personal experience with cancer, I grew up in a family who, I remember one uncle many years ago passing away with cancer. And it was the first time as a young guy. I think I was in my early teens. And he was the first person that I knew well who had cancer. Of course, as a teenager, you don't really understand any of that. So that was gone. But it hasn't run through my family. My dad had at one stage bowel cancer, but it seemed to be an easy one to sort out for him, so that was grand. But there's no immediate family members that have suffered with it. But the girl I married, the mother of my daughter, she passed away with cancer at 46, and that was my first real close-up situation. Now, we had been divorced and separated for a long time, I think 14 years at that stage, but we were good friends. And she came to me when she was diagnosed, and I had no experience whatsoever in that field, and I did everything I could. I was clutching at straws to try and help her. Um, and I'll speak a little bit further about what did help her at one point in her journey. But that's, to just say I have lost close people to cancer. She was one. Um, in the last few years, I've lost two very close friends to brain tumors. Just a few months ago, I lost a very, very great uncle of mine to cancer as well. The list goes on and on and on. In the last year or so, there's been quite a few people that I knew quite well who we've lost as well. So I've had that experience of losing close people, and it's so sad, and you do feel like your hands are tied most of the time. Um, so I just wanted to say that I'm not speaking from a place with no experience with this as I speak tonight. And yeah, I suppose the thing is, what does cause it? Um, what's going on? We could probably talk about this all night tonight, but I think it's important that we look at what may be causing it, that the medical system isn't looking at. So they only have one way of treating, let's say, which includes your chemotherapy and your radiation. So what can you do to help that along the way when you're at home on your own playing this waiting game? Having this struggle with yourself as regards on, there's one thing I can't say I've experienced where I haven't been sent home with cancer and sat there and thinking about my life. The fear that must bring, I can only think it's horrendous. So let's ask that question again. What causes it? And I'd like to throw this in, and sorry, why, I personally started to reach out to try and help people. And God, it's 11 years ago now. I was 50. When I was 50, I went on a skiing trip, and I traveled on my own, and I booked into with a company who set you up in a chalet on the mountains in the south of France, beautiful place, with a group of people, a group of strangers. And the reason I joined that group was I knew it'd meet friends, because the deal was they had this chef there, and every evening we were going to sit down to a meal and have a glass of wine or whatever. And I thought, well, that'd be very easy to mix with people. I won't be on my own. So off I went, had a great time. And I met two lovely, lovely, the whole house was great, great, great people. But there was a couple there, and they were older. I would say they were in their late 50s to into their 60s, maybe. I don't know. But they were both GPs, a husband and wife. And inevitably, one evening, we're all sitting around, there's 10 or 12 of us, and we're having conversations. And somebody brought up that question to them about cancer. And it turned out that she was a very prominent doctor in Ireland, writes, or I don't know if she still does, but at the time she was writing articles for the Times, and had done a lot of articles in medical magazines and all. She's a lovely person, very, very interesting to listen to. But when that question was asked about cancer, is there a cure? What causes it? Her answer shocked me that night, actually, because her answer was, what causes it is you're just unlucky if you get it. And that was it. Bottom line, that was her personal opinion and probably years and years of experience. Um, and I remember that sticking with me, and I'm saying to myself, no, no, that cannot be right. Being unlucky just to get it. What's that about? So again, this was at a time my ex-wife had passed away 15 years ago, so this was a few years later. And I'd already been looking into what may be the reasons. And if I speak about, her name was Marion for a moment, when I look back on our lives together and her life, it taught me so much as to how a person may get cancer. There was just a whole combination of situations within her way of being that ultimately it brought illness to her. And I'm going to cover these subjects tonight, because I've met them so many times since. But when I look back, I could almost write a book about what not to do to walk down that road towards cancer, let's say, because not everybody in her situation gets it either. But what you had with her personally was a person who I met at 17, and she used to laugh about the fact that she couldn't even boil an egg. Beans on toast was what she would cook if she was cooking, because her mum did all the cooking. But if I'm honest, her mum wasn't didn't have any knowledge around nutrition or anything like that. So very basic food in the house. I suppose there was no demand from it because Marion herself had a terrible diet. And very, very, very basic diet. Like, I used to love going for meals with her because I'd get half of her plate. She didn't eat much at all. So therefore, what she lacked in that sense was a lack of nutrition. She also worked in an environment, hairdressers, very small shop, and talk about chemicals being sprayed all over the place, all the chemicals that are in all the things they use in hairdressers. She's inhaling that stuff all day long. I remember you'd walk into the hairdressers at times just to visit, and it would always be, wow, open the windows, will you, for God's sake. It's the place that you could barely breathe in that place. And that was at a time when you could smoke indoors, so all the women in the hairdressers would be puffing on cigarettes as well. um so you had all that going on. You also had a person who suffered with anxiety, um and that anxiety got worse as she got older. Now, my understanding of anxiety today, I can absolutely see where, on a nutritional level, you can absolutely be affected with anxiety, with up and down mood swings and things like that. So, there's a definite connection there. Um, so she, at that point, there's three things. There's a lack of nutrition. There's buried in chemicals. When she wasn't working in the hairdresser, she'd be doing people at home. Many a times when we were married, I'd walk into the house and, oh my God, the smell of perm lotion and all that stuff that she's just breathing in all the time. Um, and what else did I say? Yeah, the anxiety. Then in her mid to late 20s, I seen her breaking out all over in psoriasis. At one point, she was the worst case of psoriasis in the country. So Hume Street Hospital told her. Um, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then we broke up. So she had big emotional trauma through that. Um, and just it all added up, added up, added up. And by the time she was 46, it was like, wow, this girl just isn't able anymore. And cancer had come at 43. She had a 3-year battle with it, and it took her, unfortunately, at that age. And very, very sad, as I know a lot of you have probably experienced similar stories. So, um, yeah, let me just throw in there, speaking, where am I? I've taken notes because there's so much to speak about here, but what causes it? Um, I have a list here of what causes it, and what I've written is diet, emotions, chemicals, and there's a few other things to go through. But one thing, the the great learning from me personally in that case was, that was it. She was diagnosed at 43 and she passed at 46. But at the time, her treatment was a trial. And that trial was, she had to go down to the hospital once a week. And I remember her telling me about the cost of it. And her and 9 other people were on the trial, so there was 10 of them. And it turned out that this drug they were receiving was £30,000, or I think it was pounds in those days, and maybe it was euro. 30,000 a dose, and she was having that once a week. And that trial failed on them, unfortunately. But here's a very interesting factor when I speak about emotions in disease. I had a friend, well, yeah, a person who'd become a friend of mine because she'd helped me on a personal journey when I started to do my own personal development. Very, very good psychotherapist and very spiritually switched on, very intuitive. And Marion, I recommended that she go and speak to this girl. And at the time she went to speak to her, she wasn't doing too great with her treatment. And when she began speaking with this girl, and if my memory is correct, she spoke to her for about 9 or 10 months, visiting her once a week. And in that time, she just started to get better as she was unraveling her emotional trauma that she'd carried probably all her life, most of her life. And even at one stage, when she went in for her treatment one week, the oncologist called her into his office and he asked her what she was doing because her bloods were showing she was getting better. And the other 9 people that she was meeting every week, they were all sitting in a ward having this treatment. None of them were anywhere close to where Marion was at that time. And she spoke to him about what she was doing with this girl, speaking of, dealing with emotions. And he just said to her, well, look, I don't understand that. And this is important to hear that from an oncologist. He didn't understand an emotional connection, the same as they don't understand a dietary connection. Um, and he said to her, you're doing so well. Feel free to chat to those guys out there and tell them what you're doing because there's something very different happening here. So it was very interesting to hear that. Now, unfortunately for her, she did 9 or 10 months work with that girl and then she stopped doing that work. And it didn't take long after she stopped doing that work with herself for her to slip into her old ways and then to watch her get ill again. So for me, watching that from the sidelines, let's say, it was very interesting to watch a person change so much who was so ill and get to a point where she was looking and feeling, and even her bloods were showing she was doing really well. And then when she stopped doing that work with herself, she went backwards. So, as a therapist, a natural health therapist, and someone who has taken a great interest in psychology and human behavior and psychotherapy and looked into the ancient practices of yoga and understands what conscious awareness is about, it's so, so important to look at that if life is bringing troubles, because what it helps you to do is break through fears. And one of the things I've noticed with the many, many people that I've met with cancer is the fear around it is huge. They're terrified. And it's so, so important to look at that aspect of yourself if you're dealing with cancer. I would actually say it's the most important part. Now, beside that, diet has a huge part to play in this whole thing as well. Um, and what you usually find is a person who is living in an anxious state or in a place of fear, they don't tend to look after themselves in the best possible way, let's say. And that includes probably not eating well, probably going towards comfort foods rather than real proper nutrition. And there's a double whammy then, that emotionally let's just say I'm living in fear or I'm living with anxiety or I'm living with emotional trauma. And therefore, it keeps me back from truly looking after myself. I might turn to tobacco, cigarette smoking, drinking too much alcohol, eating comfort foods, like I said, and generally just not taking care of myself because I'm on the edge all the time because I'm suffering with anxiety and the likes. So the combination of these things are very, very important. Um, and the diet, I'll talk about diet, and I'm going to come back to the diet. The other thing I have written there is chemicals. And it's unbelievable the world we're living in today as regards chemicals. We're all being bombarded with them all the time. And one of the things people don't realize is, and I've spoke about this before Christmas, when people ask certain questions, our skin is like a sponge. It's the biggest organ in our body, and it absorbs anything you put on it. Even things from the environment, it's quite possible once they attach to our skin, it's going to get absorbed and into our bloodstream. But things that people aren't realizing is deodorants that you're spraying under your arms, the amount of chemicals in them, you're spraying them right into your lymphatic system. If you're someone who's had breast cancer, they've probably removed the lymph node to see has it gone into your blood. They're right beside the breast. Now, there's so many bad things in those aerosols, and people are just spraying them in abundance into their armpits. So that's one thing alone. Soaps and shampoos. Look at all your soaps and shampoos, and you'll see the list, and it might say organic on the label, it might have a lovely smell, it might have beautiful pictures of flowers and fruits and all this sort of thing. But look at the ingredients, and the first one it'll always say agua, water. That's the biggest volume in your bottle. The next one always says sodium lauryl sulfate, or sorry, SLS. Sorry, SLS. Yeah, sodium lauryl sulfate. Sodium lauryl sulfate is a carcinogenic compound. It's used in manufacturing to clean up oil spills. What it does in your shampoos and soaps, it creates the bubbles. Without that in it, you won't have the bubbles unless they use natural stuff. Now, that's the reason the natural ones are more expensive, because they don't have that in it. So they have to use more natural compounds to create your suds and your bubbles. So you're washing your hair in that stuff, you're putting it on your skin, you're putting it on your kids, and so on and so on. You're spraying deodorants. Look at the creams you're putting onto your face. Look at your makeup. All that stuff is just laden with chemicals. Your hair dyes, the whole lot. So just to be aware of these things is important, because when I started out and learned all about this 30 years ago, I used to have to send to America for natural soaps and shampoos and toothpaste and stuff. Now you can buy them everywhere. Okay, they are a little bit more expensive, but when you look at what the other ones are capable of doing to you over a long period of time, it's worth the extra few bob if you can afford it, of course. So think about that, what you're putting on your skin. Then think of environments that you may be working in. And okay, we have to go to work. So if you're unfortunate enough to be in a place that is full of chemicals, I know nowadays there's much more health and safety protocols, but think about where you're going every day to spend 6, 7, 8 hours in a place. Is it somewhere that you need to look at protecting yourself? All these little things help. So think about that for yourself. Now, if you get into chemicals, then I'm gonna get back to diet in a moment. But yeah, they're just everywhere. They're just everywhere. Which let that lead me on to diet. And yeah, even the food we're eating today, if you're not eating good, natural, organic food, you're gonna have the same. Your chemicals, your weed killers. I think not everybody, but a lot of people are aware of glyphosate, which is in the most sold weed killer on the planet is a substance called Roundup. You'll see the farmers spraying it all over the fields. It's an amazing weed killer, but it has glyphosate in it, which there's been court cases in America over the last 10 years, I think, where the company who make Roundup, they're called Monsanto, they were in total denial about this. They were like, no, 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 it doesn't cause cancer. And finally, a guy who was a greenkeeper on a golf course, I think, ended up with horrendous cancer, and he won a big court case, and there was just hundreds of people coming after him. And that highlighted the fact that that most popular weed killer in the world is a carcinogenic. And if you're eating food that isn't organic and has been sprayed with that kind of thing, there's chemicals, you're ingesting them. They're in your food. Now, not only have you got that going on with your food if you're not eating good, organic, fresh food, the lack of nutrients in that type of food as well is just not good. The soil is being treated chemically instead of naturally. All those chemicals are going into the food because the soil is being treated chemically and not naturally, not being allowed to regenerate itself over a period of time. You can't get away from those chemicals at all. So think about that again. What am I putting into my body? What am I putting on my body? And so on and so on. That leads me to speak about good food and nutrition. I'll bring this together for you in a moment, but my feeling on it, as someone who's been studying this with great interest over the years, is that when they say that bad food causes X, Y, and Z, is it the bad food that's causing it, or is it there's no nutrition in the food? And over a long period of time, if I'm living on, let's say, processed food, which all the goodness has gone out, is my body just getting weaker and weaker because I'm not giving it the nutrition that it needs to stay healthy? Think of it that way, rather than just saying, oh, that's bad for you, that's bad for you. We get sick of that. And then it's like, what can I eat? Can I eat anything? I've had that so many times with people who sat in front of me with cancer. You run through a diet with them and they shake their head and go, what have I got left to eat? That's everything I eat. And then you're like, well, maybe it's telling you something. And I've come to the conclusion that's what it's telling you is you're lacking the basic nutrition that the body needs, and therefore the body falls into illness. Because there's thousands of people out there now today, thousands of dietitians who have cured all the major diseases just quite simply by changing people's diets and doing it properly. So, there's too much evidence out there now. And I know people would say, well, there was never proper trials done and blah, blah, blah. But nobody's ever going to do a trial on food. So, you'll be sitting on the fence waiting for that. You'll be dead before. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So it's up to us to bring awareness to ourselves around this subject. So, yeah, which brings me to the big reason why I'm here tonight, why I wanted to speak about this tonight. Let me just run through this as well. A few years ago, what was it now? Let me think. It's about 7 or 8 years ago. My mum was diagnosed with, she needed knee replacements. She was told, I won't go into the whole story about it, but it came to a point where her knees were x-rayed and she was just told, your knees, both of them need to be replaced. They're chronic and we'll put you top of the waiting list. But I knew in those days that waiting list could be a year, could be 2 years. And she was in a bad way. And a friend of mine said to me, have you ever looked at working with cannabis? And I knew nothing about cannabis, nothing at all. And he said to me, look, I've been looking at this and following this on the internet, and he showed me stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't know anything about that. And where do you even start? It's illegal. What would I need? What do you do here? But it did lead me to do a bit of research, and I found a company in San Diego that was doing CBD oil. I mean, I think we all know what CBD oil is now. It's derived from the hemp plant, and you have two types of plant. You have, let's call it marijuana, and you have hemp. you can't get high on hemp. It doesn't have the THC compound in it, or it has it in a tiny, tiny amount. That isn't enough to get high. So I found this company in San Diego that were making a very strong one, 50% strength, which is very, very powerful. And I called them and asked them, were they able to send it to Ireland? And they said to me, yes, they would. So I asked what their recommendations would be. And they went along, they recommended a program from my mum. And of course, I'm asking, will this definitely work? And they're saying, we don't know, but we've seen great results in arthritic conditions. And we had that conversation. And lo and behold, I ordered a 3-month supply where I would be giving her a gram a day. And it cost quite a lot of money. It cost nearly €5,000. And today I know you can get the same amount and the same strength for, oh my God, way less than 2,000 now. It might cost you 1,500 to get the same stuff today. But in them days, it was new to the market. But I'll tell you this, my mum was pain free within a couple of weeks. So good, 6 weeks later, after she started that gram a day, she went off on a 6-week holiday to stay with her brother down in Spain with no pain in her knees. And I wouldn't let her carry the oil with her because I didn't know if the customs would take it from her. And she came back, finished off the program, and she never had to get her knees replaced. That blew me away and made me research more. And then lo and behold, I come across all the information that I think most of us have heard today about the THC compound, the illegal one, and how good it is at curing cancer. So of course I looked into that and I looked into it, and then someone I knew got cancer, and I suggested that to them, and they went and got what they needed, and they sorted out their cancer. And I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting, but very difficult to get because of what you were dealing with. So over time, as a therapist, people are always talking to me about different health situations and that, and I passed that information on to a number of people. And over the period of a few years, I watched at least 20 people with stage 4 cancers actually getting better using oil, but they were having to go through terrible difficulty to source it and find it and get their hands on it, and it was nearly as stressful as the illness itself. And then I moved to Spain 6 years ago, and a year later, my partner's mum gets diagnosed with cancer, and it was a very serious cancer. And again, I knew this person. I didn't know her very well at the time because when I start going out with her daughter, she moved to Spain that same year. But I got on very well with her, and um, I got to know her very well over the next few months after she'd been diagnosed with cancer. After we got her home, she came home to live with us, and anyone that knows me may have seen the little video. If you haven't seen it, it's called Geraldine. It's on my YouTube channel. And thankfully, there's cannabis clubs in Spain. Thankfully, you're allowed to grow a few plants yourself legally. And we got our hands on the oil very easy, and it was very, very good. It was even lab tested. So I know the strength of it was, if I remember right, it was 74% strength, very powerful. We gave it to her in suppository form. And the illness she had, they told her they couldn't cure it. The oncologist opened her up to remove the tumor and then realized it was attached to her aorta, which is the main artery of the heart. And they had to sew her back up and say to her, we can't do anything here. We can offer you chemotherapy, but it's not going to help your situation. So she refused the treatment because she didn't want to go through chemotherapy if she was going to lose that battle. She didn't want to be sick from chemotherapy. She had a conversation with the oncologist, and they agreed that she would go home and they would send palliative care. We started working with the oil, and within 3 months, she was 100%. 9 months later, we had a new scan. The tumor was dead. It was it was half the size it had been. It wasn't on her aorta anymore, and she was better. It was gone. Now the funny thing is, we lost Geraldine a month ago. She was 76 and she had chronic anemia, and she did continue to use the oil right up to near the end. But even we've just been reading the report today from the hospital, and they kept telling us all along they treated her as a palliative care patient in the last year, or not year, since last March or April, May, maybe, because it was on her records. But they told us only a couple of months ago there's no cancer in this body. We're dealing with a situation that is chronic anemia. It's creating difficulties, but there's no cancer. And on the report there, we were just reading it this evening, no cancer. Now, it was amazing to watch a person who was that sick get well so quick. 3 months, we were able to send her home to look after her husband, who had a really bad problem with a diabetic ulcer. And she was from almost on a deathbed to go and look after him. 3 months, that's all it took. Now, what we did along with the oil was her diet was really strict. It was vegan nutrition, no deviation as regards processed foods or anything. It was mostly smoothies because she wasn't able to eat until she started to get well. But it was amazing to watch the combination of those things just making this woman better and healthier and stronger. Amazing to watch. And that really opened my eyes towards that. Put the video up onto YouTube to tell people, and then of course I get inundated as a therapist with people with cancer. And it was like, I can't help you. It was easy to get this in Spain, but I can't get it in Ireland for you. I can't do that. It's impossible for me to do stuff that is illegal. So, of course, it kept driving me and driving me. There has to be another way. There has to be another way. And thankfully, I've found another way. And it's perfectly legal, all above board. It's backed by a very professional company. And I'm delighted to be able to share this information with you tonight. I have personally seen, now I mentioned earlier I lost my uncle a few months ago. Great guy, terrible loss to the world. What a lovely man. And he worked with me with this protocol I'm going to speak to you about tonight. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. But what it showed me was the power of it. He was unwell, I think, for a year, possibly a bit more, and he would have had a good diet. He stuck to the program almost for the whole time, apart from when the hospital asked him to come off the supplements because they wanted to see why he was doing so well. He slipped a little bit at that stage, but he kicked back in when he went back on the supplements. But what they did for him was they kept him really well. They kept him. He was on quite big doses of chemotherapy for a long time. He didn't lose his hair, which they predicted he would. He didn't get sick at all, which they predicted he would. And if I remember right, it was predicted he would get a rash. He didn't get the rash. And he was great. He didn't look sick. He actually looked better than not that he ever looked unwell, but for a man who had the illness that he had, he looked fantastic. And he would drop in every now and again and have chats, and he was just brilliant. And unfortunately, near the end, he slipped a little. His thyroid went down, and that took him. And the funny thing is, for an illness that was as severe as it was, he had 3 bad weeks at the end. And how many people do we know who have a year of suffering, 6 months of suffering near the end, coming to their end, and they leave this world in a terrible way, and they leave that stigma with their family. You hear it all the time, oh God, it was terrible to watch them wasting away and so on, to watch them in pain and all this. This guy didn't go through any of that until the end. And a great compliment that his family gave me was he sailed peacefully to the end. And, if we could all do that, it'd be fantastic. And he swore it was the supplements. He had great conversations with me about it, So Yeah, we lost that one, but it was easy for him with such a severe illness. Um, there's another two guys that have done the program, and they're both at the moment, as far as I'm aware, cancer free. They've stuck with it and they've done really well in, again, quite serious cancers. So um, that's been great to see. There was another guy who went on it, but he disappeared. I don't know where he went. So I don't know how he's done, if he's good, bad, or indifferent. I haven't a clue. Um, so yeah, it's been really interesting to watch that. And a funny story then as well. These compounds work with humans and canines, dogs. And a friend of mine down here that we meet almost every day walking the dogs, a couple of months ago said to us, look at my dog, this lump on, like where your Achilles is, um, the vet has said it's a tumor and it's coming from the bone, and he can't do anything about it, because if he removes it, because it's coming from the bone, it will spread through him rapidly. And his advice has been just, he's not an old dog, but he's not a young dog. And so the advice was, just ride this one out. There's no point in cutting it away. So we tried these compounds with the dog. I checked in with the company. They said they actually do work with canines. Um, so we put the dog on them, and I think it's 2 weeks ago now. It was before Christmas. He the tumor, we watched it. I was meeting this dog almost every day, and it was fascinating to watch. It was a hard lump at first, and then it started to get bigger and bigger and bigger and look inflamed. And once or twice he knocked it and it bled. And as it got bigger and bigger, it started to come loose, and you could, then it was softer also. And we kept thinking, is it possible this is growing out? We didn't know. Honestly, we didn't know. And we watched it and watched it and watched it. And we were trying to be positive, thinking, yeah, that's all that's happening. It's growing out. It's gonna fall off, maybe, you know. And then it was like, she said, I'm not going to say the girl's name, but she said to me one day, it's like a mushroom at the moment. There's a little stem on it and you can shake it and move it about. And she showed it to me, and it was. And then she went to the vets to show the vet, look, what's happening here. You know, the vet supported the program because he said he knew a bit about them. And he said, that looks like we can remove it. And they removed it. They sent it off for a biopsy, and the tumor was dead. And that was over, I think, a 3-month period of time. And the dog is great, not a bother on it. The tumor's gone, and then the bloods that they did showed up really good, and no cancer in the blood. So yeah, there it was, watching a tumor on a limb growing away, growing out, and almost falling off, but then being able to easily be removed, and lo and behold. So that's been fantastic to watch for the last couple of months here. It was a real bonus for me to see somebody enthusiastically doing that for the pet. So let me tell you what they are. I have this, let me say this first to you. I have this program available now to anybody who wants it. I've been working with it for over a year, I think, and there's only been a few people, like I said, but the people who do these programs for me, I've got to know them, I've got to trust them. They work in South Africa, and they're telling me they get up to an 80% success rate with people who go on this program. And what's great about them is, let's just say someone out there has cancer and you want to do this program. How it works is, you send me your bloods, I send them away they have professionals who look at the bloods in the company. They have a great person who oversees the whole thing, and she understands, she's a biochemist, and she understands chemotherapy and radiation just like an oncologist. She has an incredible wealth of knowledge. So it's very important that she knows the person's history of health, the program the hospital are going to put them on, and what the cancer is, obviously. Then she will read the bloods. She understands all the different types of chemotherapy a person can be put on. So some of these compounds can't be given with certain chemotherapies. So she understands all that. That's why it's so important you do this right. Um, and then she'll recommend appropriately the supplements that are needed. And anytime new bloods are done, she'll reassess the bloods for you as well. So it's done very professionally, and it's supported down there by a lot of doctors. They're working with a lot of doctors, a lot of oncologists in South Africa. Now none of us can make claims for cures, and I'm not doing that here tonight. That's why I entitled this Cancer Support Program. It is a support program if you're going on your chemotherapy or radiations and so on. But the sooner the better you get to this if you're interested in doing it. It does cost money. I've seen it vary from between €400 to €600 a month, just so as you know what you're up against. Everybody is different. The recommendations can look similar, but the amounts are different depending on what they see in the bloods. So don't just jump on the site and start buying these things in a situation where you're dealing with cancer. Do it properly if you're going to do it at all, because that is so important to give yourself every possible chance to get through whatever you may be going through. So what are they? What are these things? I've written down again a few notes. The first one, they're called salvestrols. And what are salvestrols? They're a compound that's found in fruits and some veg. And what they are is, this is amazing because I'll explain how it works. What they are is they're a defense mechanism in a fruit, let's say, and they're mainly in the skin or the root system. And you can see this on the internet if you look up salvestrols. One of the things it does, right? Let's say one of the things that can attack fruits and vegetables is fungus. If a fungus comes along and it attacks the fruit, what the salvestrols do is they just come together in that area and they take care of the fungus. They kill it. And then the fruit can go on and be healthy until it's picked and we can eat it. That's simply how they work, okay? What they do with a cancer cell is there's an enzyme in the cancer cell called a CYP1B1. And what the salvestrol does is it turns that enzyme on. And when that enzyme switches on, it causes the cancer to go into what's called apoptosis. It dies. The cancer cells dies. And this is science. This is not nutritional experts or anything. The guys who discovered these were two research scientists working in England in a lab developing chemotherapy drugs for one of the pharmaceuticals. And they discovered these compounds and they copied them. That's what they do. They'll find it in nature and they copy it, turn it into synthetic medicine, and then they can have the patent on it and sell it and walk away with it. They developed 20 different chemotherapy drugs with salvestrols, but none of them came near the natural form of salvestrol in the power that it had to kill a cancer cell. I don't know what the scale was on, but the figures are something like this. In the chemical form, the salvestrols measured in the rate that it could kill the cancer at 1200, if I remember the figures right. In nature, it measured at 25,000. So you had 1,200 chemically, 25,000 naturally. Huge difference. And those two guys did that work for years and years and years, and they've brought that information to the world about these compounds called salvestrol. They're very, very powerful in killing tumors, in killing cancer cells. And just put it into the internet and you'll see it all there. So that's one. Now, that's the interesting part about diet and cancer. So if we're eating fruit and veg that have sylvesterols in them and they're in our bodies, are they going to stop cancer developing? Now, that's a question I'm asking. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Is that capable of happening? So, is that the importance of having a good diet? Because so many people out there are denying that. So many oncologists, when people say, should I change my diet? Should I do this? Should I do that? They say, no, just do what you're doing, because they don't understand the nutritional aspect. But there it is, in it, there's a simple compound showing what it can do against a cancer cell, and it's in abundance in nature. So is it important to have a healthy diet? Answer that yourself. The other thing that comes along, these are the two, there's two things that they always give on the program. The other one is a compound called AHCC. And AHCC comes from the shiitake mushroom. It's mostly, if I think, maybe all made in Japan. It's ran through a fermentation program. They use compounds from that mushroom. Again, very powerful anti-cancer. When you look it up, you'll see there's been no trials done. Again, they don't do trials with natural substances. So you won't find your trials, but it's a huge seller in Japan in supporting cancer programs, one of the biggest. Um, it's known as a natural immunotherapy, and there's been groundbreaking work done in the medical world with immunotherapy. There's a lot of them saying that's the future of cancer treatment. So, excuse me, you have it here in natural form as well. And what I've noticed about the programs is they always use those two all the time. Um, they are a little bit expensive, but they're doing a great job and they're very, very good products. These guys are sourcing these from the best sources in the world. There's no messing about with them. They're really, really doing great work. It's particularly around cancer. Um, the other thing I see them using a lot, but they don't use it with some chemotherapies, and this is why it's very important not to just take this information and run with it yourself. Curcumin. They do a very powerful form of curcumin. It's in a liposomal form and fully absorbable and so on. It's a very powerful anti-inflammatory, which when you have cancer, your inflammatory markers will be huge. It's always the way. That's the blood will show that. But curcumin is also known to help kill cancer cells as well. Again, look it up. You'll see it out there. It's, again, no trials, but we could be waiting the rest of our lives on trials, on our grandchildren's lives on trials on these things. They're not going to happen. So another thing I notice they always add is omegas because of their anti-inflammatory. They're just, again, powerful anti-inflammatories. Another thing I've seen them use, especially when there's liver involved, is glutathione. Glutathione is a natural substance that our body creates, but as we all get older, the ability to create it seems to lower a lot. And it's a very important, it's the most powerful antioxidant on the planet. It's the most powerful antioxidant we can put into our body. So it's a great fighter in situations like that as well, for the immune system, for many, many things. It's an antioxidant. And when we get oxidation in our body, it means oxidation is like rust on your car, or slice an apple or an avocado, leave it in the air, goes brown. That's oxidation. That happens to us as well. Something like glutathione stops that happening. But again, it has to be looked at properly to be added to protocols. And I've seen them use green tea. They have a very powerful green tea. It's in a liposomal form, which means you absorb the whole thing. And the volume you absorb is like, it's the equivalent of having 25 cups of green tea. And we all know green tea is good for us, I think. I don't think it's good for us. I know it is, but I think we all know. That's what I meant there. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to offer you this program. So let me just run over it one more time of how it works. If you or anyone you know is in trouble, unfortunately, with cancer, and they want to do this, what this part of it is free. Um, what I need you to do is send me the bloods, the latest bloods that you got from your doctor, and your medical history, what the diagnosis is, and what the treatment program is going to be, or if you're already on one, what it is, what type of chemotherapy you're having. And then I will send that off for you. They will not do this for you. The company, you'll see them on my website, Coin Healthcare. They won't deal with you if you just start sending them emails. And some people have already done that. Why? I don't know. I'm here, I'm offering you this for free. To do that part of it, you can get the recommendation back and then you can decide whether you want to do it or not. So that's when it'll start costing you money. If anybody wants to look at the emotional aspect of it, I'm available for consultations there. I can do them online for you. I can do them at the clinic in Dublin, but they will cost a fee. So, like I said, the first part, it's free. The whole, the building the program or putting the recommendation together for you, that's all free. And then you can just buy the products as you need them. We have them there and get them out to you within a few days, get you started on the programs and support you through it as it regards when you get your bloods done in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, we can look at them again and so on and so on. So that's all there for you. Just send me an email, give me a call, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm here, I'm available. If you don't get me straight away, I will get back to you. And what else did we want to say here tonight? Yeah, just it's great to be able to offer you this. Oh, this is very, very, very important. Very important. I spoke earlier about cannabis oil, and I have seen it work tremendously well with cancer, but it is illegal. And when you're buying it on the street, you don't know what the hell you're getting. But if you do go with this program, you cannot take cannabis oil with salvestrols. They do the same thing in the cell. They switch that enzyme on. And what happens is they fight to do the same job and they cancel each other out. Trust me on that. You cannot use the two of them together. So don't think I'll throw the kitchen sink at it. I'll get my oil, I'll get these. You'll lose. It's counterproductive. So whatever you do, don't use cannabis oil and silvestrols together. Okay, that's clear enough for you. I really need to make that clear. So, yeah, like I said, I'm really excited to be able to offer you something that's legal and above board with no problems. They're all 100% natural substances. They won't do any harm whatsoever. They won't interfere. If you do it with me properly, there'll be no interference with your medical program. And one thing that's really important is don't wait. The sooner the better you get to it. Don't wait till you're being told, oh, this isn't working, because it's always difficult to pull any illness back, and especially a severe illness like cancer. So the sooner you do it, the better. Now, you can also take silvestrols and AHCC as preventatives, but always remember this as well. Supplements are called supplements for a reason. They supplement a healthy diet. So don't just think I'll take these things and then I'll be okay and I can run off and do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work that way. It's important that we look after ourselves and try to prevent ourselves meeting one of these major illnesses. And yeah, common sense is the real thing. So at the start of a new year, we all get enthusiastic after Christmas, after we've abused ourselves, me included. And we all make promises that we're going to do all these good things, and after a few weeks they fade away. So yeah, take care of yourself that way. It's good, it's important. What I may do at the end of this month, at the end of January, is actually offer up a healthy program to do along with me. I'm making some plans for myself to do some things this year, and I may be offering it out to you. Leave it with me, and I'll see. Or else let me know if you'd be interested. And if enough people push me, I may get in there and go live and take this further for you. As regards healthy living, and get some people on. I hope to be able to get one of the doctors to speak about this over the next while when I'm doing these. And yes, I'll be on next Monday live again. But then after that, I'm running a healing course in Dublin, and that's going to include my Monday nights. So I'm going to have to switch this one to a different night, or possibly record it and put it up for you. Leave that with me and we'll see. But I'll be here next Monday. So this conversation, if you know anyone with cancer, please share it with them. It'll be on my YouTube channel. You'll go into the live section and you'll see the videos there. And if you have any questions, or anybody has any questions, maybe you can throw them at me during the week and I'll answer them live next Monday. Maybe we can take this conversation a bit further. So thanks for listening. We've ran over the hour now, and that's great. As I said, we could probably speak about this all night. And hope you enjoyed, and please feel free to share it with anyone, because this program is now available to you all. So good night once again. Have a great new year. Have a great year. Have a great life, and take care of yourself. Namaste.